We move to the next category, which is purchasers. So when we talk about exempt purchasers, the determination as to who is an exempt purchaser is going to be under state statutes. So these will vary widely moving state to state. The only consistent one, or as consistent as we can get, is the federal government. So states are prohibited from directly taxing the federal government under the US Constitution. So we see that becoming or delineated in the statutes in a couple different ways. It may state that the state cannot tax the federal government. They may list them as an exempt entity, or they may say prohibited from taxing anything that is prohibited under the US Constitution. Now, there are a couple of states where the tax is really more of a tax on the seller. Arizona and Hawaii are two of those states that there are some exceptions to this exemption. So, for example, in Hawaii, sales of goods, tangible personal property, are exempted on sales to the federal government. But if you are providing a taxable service in Hawaii, the federal government is not exempt there. If I am not selling directly to the government, I'm selling to a government contractor, that may lose the exemption and you may have to charge tax to the contractor. The federal government typically is never going to give you an exemption certificate. Rather, what you need to be able to do is prove that the sale was made directly to the federal government and payment was made directly by the federal government. So you're going to need those proof, things like a purchase order, and then actually the proof of payment that it was the government and not like an employee that is getting reimbursed. When we talk about state and local governments, this can vary. California is the largest state that actually taxes sales to itself. So this exemption is by the grace of the legislature, and you can't just assume that it is going to be exempt. If you are selling to another state, so I'm here in Illinois, there are about 25 states that have audit offices here in the state of Illinois. Will Illinois grant an exemption to the state of Ohio that has an audit office here? Well, I've got to look and see the state of Illinois when they buy something is exempt. In Ohio, the state of Ohio is exempt in Ohio, so it's likely that Illinois is going to grant that exemption. But the state of California, because they would not exempt Illinois in California, is probably not going to be exempted. So you'll have to look at that state by state. And then you also want to watch for whether or not there is a different exemption that might apply. For example, if you're selling to a school, there might be a educational exemption. Documentation for sales to state and local governments could be like we just talked about for federal, that is proof of sale to and payment by, but other states may require the state and local government to actually give an exemption certificate. The state of Illinois is one of those. The state government actually and local governments have to apply to the state of Illinois and be granted an exemption number that then they will use on their purchases.